common knowledge that oftentimes people move into leadership not because they're good leaders, but because they're functionally good at their substantive work. So if I'm an engineer, I'm brilliant, or if I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm brilliant at the work of, mechanical engineering. And so it's assumed that I should now be leading people to also do what I do. So the thought is, I can reproduce myself by way of managing these people because I am, I'm a subject matter expert in my area of work. And that's a false notion. And we all know that. But I go a little bit deeper than that. And I say it's that, and we also have never really been taught how to be leaders. And then ultimately, a lot of us are carrying our own baggage as leaders or as people, not even as leaders, but as people. And so I went to my supervisor, who had never been asked to speak on any panel for anything. Can you give me the time off in order to participate in this? He took a look at it, and he took a look at me, and he said, and even though this was something that really would have inured to the benefit of our office, because I was now speaking in a capacity that would have been able to, create some notoriety for us, would have been able to create more, notice about who we are and the work that we're doing. And it really would have been a great, PR moment for us, a great commercial. He said, I'll give you 1 hour of leave to participate in this, the 1 hour that you're on that panel. And I thought to myself, how are you really encouraging me to go to the networking functions, to go to the, other panels, to meet people, and to really feel as though I'm not just there in my own selfish capacity, but I'm also here for this office. But once again, remember, no one had ever invested in him and thought that he had anything worth saying. So therefore, how could he see that in someone else? So I think that's a lot of sometimes what's wrapped up in leadership, that people haven't done their own self-development work. David, I'm looking forward to seeing your reaction when I say this, but we often say in the workplace, relationships matter. I worked in hospitality where it was just so evident that nothing got done without relationships. However, those relationships are also killing your organization. Even though you think that the relationships are what's helping to create collaboration, they're helping to create camaraderie, they're able to create that sense of determinism in the workplace. They're also creating insider and outsider environments in your organization. You have cliques, just like in high school. It's thinking back to your high school cafeteria and who sat where and who had relationships with who. When you translate that into the workplace, it's wonderful when you're on the inside. When you're that person who has access, when you're that person who can be forgiven for, the mistakes that you made on an assignment, when your mistakes were seen as, that's something I did when I was a junior engineer, a junior attorney, when I was an intern. However, if you're not on the inside and you are that outsider, you are now seen as that person who is not going to get the informal mentoring. You're that person who might feel isolated. You're that person who might also be subjected to bullying. And so, quite honestly, we need to be mindful and we need to interrogate the relationships that we believe are so important in our organizations. When people are looking at where they're investing, and I think it's understandable and I think it's acceptable in that if you're someone who has invested your time and your effort and your energy into this organization, you want to know that there's an opportunity for you waiting down the yellow brick road. You want to know that eventually you could also be a director. You want to know that you can also one day move into the C-suite and be a vice president. And so you're watching to see what's getting the people who are currently in those roles, what's getting those people there. And when you're noticing that you're not given the same kinds of opportunities and access, that then helps to create and fill in the gaps of the stories that you're telling about your leadership and your organization and whether or not this is the place for you. There are many organizations that do understand the importance of culture repair and where they don't just simply try to breeze past and breeze through what the pain point was for the organization. Organizations that I've worked with and where they do see the need to actually go beyond just the compliance training. And they really do sit with the hard and difficult work of how are we making sure that people can recover from mistakes? How do we make sure that there is parity and that there's equity in how people are getting quality work assignments, and that people aren't struggling with dual identity and feeling as though they can't show up as, who they are in terms of the work that they're doing. How are we making sure that their authentic self can show up in terms of, the contributions that they can make to our organization? And how are we making sure that people aren't isolated, especially if they're the first or the only of a particular demographic group? How are we making sure that this is something that we are going to make a part of our priority in how we're treating people?